Hello, everybody. It's me. It's the Nutty Professor and a child who is very wriggly. So I'm going to let him wriggle off. It's me again, the Nutty Professor, and I'm back. Now, I already showed you the title of this podcast, and we're doing it the easier way now. We're back to the simplified series. The last podcast was an outdoor car podcast featuring my new Mini Cooper. Actually, I don't need this because I'm inside. I've only got the cats here. But I wanted to wear the mask because we're in the lockdown again, approaching Christmas, and just to remind you, as if you need reminding, there's a pandemic going on. And it also matches. See, it matches my new Mini Cooper hat, which was a gift from my mechanic in the country, and it matches my Nutty Professor black T-shirt and my mask and my hat. Everything goes together. In the last podcast, the car one, it was professionally taped by my former student and his friend, and it was done on 4K, all of that professionally edited with titles and everything. We're back to the simplified during lockdown, and I can do these myself. He's taught me how to do it. So, and this was his suggestion, was to get some whiteboards. Apparently there's a Hong Kong, the leading YouTuber in Hong Kong uses a sort of a variant. I think his is more fancy. He prints things and he puts them on writing boards. But this is my way. This way, now I don't have to, wait for him to edit and do all of that. I can just post this thing myself if I don't mess it up. So I've got a few of these, and that's going to be the strategy here. I'm going to just show these as I talk. So we're back to simplified series, and as you saw, the title is this is I am the Nutty Prof. This is simplified series number 3. Okay, and I am evaluating PATAP. PATAP is my own alternative approach to addiction. It's my personalized process, and very likely there's going to be a part 2. So I'm starting this one as a part 1. If you're not familiar with PATAP, I do go through it in some detail in the earlier podcasts. And I want to evaluate it. I'm going to reiterate, and I'm going to say that I'm not recommending, I'm not suggesting anybody else do exactly what I did. This is personalized. That's what the first P is for. It's personalized. It's what worked for me, and that too after a lot of false starts and falls and trial and error, and as I've explained before, I came up with the system only because 12-step approaches don't work for me. And in the very first podcast, I think I said I had been told when I went to a couple of 12-step meetings and they just didn't work for me. I think I had been told that they work better with extroverts than introverts. And even though my students never believed it, I am very much an introvert. And as such, my persona is the Nutty Professor. It's my persona. It's my mask. Kind of like this mask, But I'm really quite introverted, and that's also why I've adjusted pretty well to lockdown and quarantine, because quarantine was basically my lifestyle. And that's something that I'm going to talk about a little bit, the quarantine helping, hurting myself in terms of, dealing with addictive issues. And I've heard that it has also affected others. Again, probably in different ways. So I want to evaluate PATAP. It has worked because I am almost, not quite, but in a couple of days, I'm going to be 11 months clear. Now remember, I'm using the word clear rather than clean. This is a part of PATAP, trying to come up with a slightly less judgmental terms to be used in addictions. You know what? I'm wearing this hat because it came up in the last podcast, the car one. I was wearing a blue hat, a BMW hat, because I didn't have a mini hat, and this one was given to me by my mechanic in the country, and it's a very nice hat. It's sort of a Christmas present, but I told him that, since I'm an atheist, it's a winter solstice present. But and it's not a knockoff. He made a point of telling me it's a genuine mini hat, So I feeling a little warm though, so I'm going to remove it. Maybe we'll go to the fedora. This fedora is ventilated, so it might be a little cooler than the Mini Cooper cap. So in this podcast, I want to remind you a little bit about PATAP and evaluate it. It has sort of worked, but I mean, there were a lot of falls, and earlier on it was like a few weeks, 10 weeks fall, 8 weeks fall, and then they were getting more rapid. They were getting more frequent, like 4 weeks, and towards the end it was every couple of weeks, until I hit bottom. And that's another point I want to make. Hitting bottom, hitting a wall, that's also personalized, that's also subjective. I probably have gone lower, but that was as low as I wanted to go, And then I put everything I had into it, and I started volunteering at a cat shelter, and I ended up fostering and then adopting a couple more cats, and that's a whole other, we met one of them, my babies, a huge push against the pulls. And that's another one of my concepts I've talked about in previous podcasts. The pull towards, whatever the addiction is, and the pushes against it. So for me, the pushes against it, the positive pushes are my cats, and cat volunteering, and and all of that. And I was helping at a cat rescue shelter during the pandemic, because cats are still in trouble. They don't know it's a pandemic, They need to foster homes. And then the other pushes have been COVID itself, the dangers of COVID, particularly in the underworld, dangers not only of catching, the virus, but, drugs are being mixed. And I've heard, very sad stories, but because of closed borders and drugs are being mixed and all of that stuff. So those are the pushes against the pulls. And as I discussed with my analyst, and I said COVID has to a certain degree helped me. It's also hurt a little bit, not maybe as much as other people, because as I said, my lifestyle was basically quarantine anyway, sort of a hermit, but it has made it harder to rechannel now to go out and see movies. And when you have cravings, go out and see a movie, go out to eat, can't do that now. So I'm kind of just trapped in the house, and when the cravings come and the pull comes, it comes. But the pushes are still stronger. So I am almost 11 months clear. As my analyst said, you can't always call up a global pandemic on demand. So it was one of those things and that's another concept that I've come up with that will come up later in the discussion, is that when the factors converged, the hitting bottom, and then the coming up, what do I do, and then volunteering, and then and then COVID happened, and then there were pressures against binging, and everything just came together. And as long as the pushes outweighed the pulls, clear, made it 11 months, and then there is another month to go. There's no guarantees in any of this, and I've said this before, the pulls, they don't really get lesser, or they haven't in my experience. When the pulls come, they're still strong. It's tough. At times lately I've had a little bit of relief, and it doesn't last all that long, but there's maybe minutes, bits of clarity, sort of a peak experience without substances. Maslow talked about that, so I kind of have a better idea of what he was talking about now. So that's the whole thing in terms of, that's what I'm going to address in these next couple of podcasts. You know what? Why don't we keep them short? So I'm going to, this has sort of been the introduction. It's been part one. I'm going to continue this in a part two. So we're going to have, I think, a part two and a part three. And I'm going to remind you of PATAP. If you haven't seen the earlier podcasts, even if you have, it's been a while, I'm going to remind you of PATAP, and I'm going to look at it in terms of what's worked and what hasn't for me. And the caveat is always there. This is what has worked for me. I'm not advising this for others. My advice to others who find that they can't do 12 steps, they go to one or two meetings and it's just not for them, or clinical is just not for them, maybe tried rehab, or you can't afford rehab, or couldn't find one, there's a long waiting list, and you're doing it on your own. My advice is you sort of have to do what I did and personalize your own process. Now, I have a bit of an advantage in that I was a psychology professor, and I know all the theories, and even though my own framework is really based not so much on psychology. There is some psychodynamic. We've come across quite a bit of Freud, Thanatos and Eros, and ego defense mechanisms. And we've come across Jung, of course, because I'm in Jungian analysis. And Jungian framework, shadow, persona, has come up quite a bit. But more than that, my approach has been based on pretty much my own experiences, trial and error, and some psychodynamic psychological frameworks, plus literature and mythology. And we've come across Odysseus and Sisyphus, and come up frameworks and mythological frameworks, and literary and art. So we've come across people like Carrie Fisher and Diane Arbus and Diamond Arbus photographs, and Star Wars, and all of that stuff. So we've had film. I had a podcast about film and shadow. So let's keep this as part one, and I will be back very soon. Not sure which hat I'm going to wear, but I will be back very soon to look at whiteboard number two, which is, and it's labeled, it's number two, So this is PATAP. See you shortly. Bye for now!